We want to build into a two-planet species to be able to go down in history with a tremendous heritage of charting a course for this great nation to be the one that leads humanity to a two-planet system by permanence on Mars.
This is great. I appreciate everybody coming tonight, and we worked pretty hard on this book, and I had more hair, and my beard was black when I started this thing. But we worked it out, and we had a great time putting this together. It was a challenging timeline, and you know, when you deal with the future, it's pretty exciting. So, and this guy's full of full throttle vision about where we're going. So it was a real treat to do this book, but I think, you know, if you have to start anywhere, it's obviously emblazoned in people's mind, and certainly mine as a young guy watching you and Neil come out of the Eagle, the lunar module, and frankly, I've always wondered why it took you so long to get out. Because I was waiting, I had the whole neighborhood was fixated on this. I kept promising them they were going to get out there pretty soon. What was the progress?
I was told not to open that hatch after Neil until 22.5 minutes.
Is that right?
I had to wait inside and look out and watch him go down. And so he went out there with a little shovel. I don't know how he got the shovel. I did send the camera down to him on a very sophisticated machine. It had a little pulley here and a rope on it, and it kind of went down.
The best Johnson Space Center can...
Oh, yeah, they're very advanced. So anyway, I saw him grubbling around, picking up this sample, and I figured this could be pretty easy. Look how easy it is for him to do that.
So you get down there.
So then 22.5 minutes expired, and I back out of the hatch, and I remember the checklist very carefully. It said, partially close the hatch. So I said to Neil, I'm going to partially close the hatch, being careful not to lock it on my way out.
Yeah.
Not so funny. There isn't a handle on the outside.
What was that like? I mean, when you think about it today, you said magnificent desolation. Well, what do you remember about it now?
I really couldn't describe it other than the word desolate. It was the most lifeless thing I'd really ever seen. You know, I've been around the ocean and looked at a lot of sand, but this was all kind of one color, and shadows were black, and the colors were different shades of gray, little roly-poly indentations, previous craters, and absolutely no sign of life. We knew there was no air, but you look at this sky, and with the sunlight, it was sort of a velvet black. You could look out and see the horizon curve away, and if there was a boulder out there, you could see it. It was that clear. Mm-hmm. But what I knew about it then, and then what I saw, not a good place to set up housekeeping.
Okay.
We're going to stay in this little machine, and then we're going to get the hell out of here and get back home.
Do you feel the space station, you know, it's $100 and some billion investment. 16 countries have worked hard to put that together. We've got astronauts in there right now. Do you think it's been being used or underutilized now?
For that shuttle system, it never quite made 40 flights a year, or some people even promised 50 flights a year. 9, 1 year, most of the time 6 flights. Not the safest thing. The reason why the shuttle had to be designed that way is because the previous program that was going to follow Apollo, that we really wanted, was managed, let me say. And we had to cancel it, and then we had to scurry and put together a shuttle system.
You're a big proponent of space tourism. Space tourism with this particular vehicle just recently had its first engine test.
Yeah, well, you know how a lot of this started after we got the shuttle about going? I worked with some United Airlines pilots who wanted the airline to buy some shuttles so that they could fly shuttles instead of 727s. They were getting kind of bored with that. But of course, the idea would be that they would put in the cargo bay a number of tourists.
But but this particular vehicle this is Richard Branson. You've met him and talked to him a lot. This is a 6-passenger, 2-pilot suborbital vehicle. How important is suborbital to get people acclimated to the true experience of orbital flight? Is it a essential
if you
step?
ask the master marketer, Sir Richard, it'll tell you that you're going into space.
Yeah.
Not only that, you're going to be called an astronaut. Man, that's pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, some people claim
and Richard, of course, thought that, well, we can do this suborbital, and people can look out these big windows, and pretty soon we'll be able to go from one place to another. I don't think Richard understood what ballistic missiles do. But they fire and they go and they cover a long distance, okay? Yeah. But they also go pretty damn fast going up, and man, do they come pretty fast coming down. It's not a good system for point-to-point transportation.
Another private sector activity that's interesting is Robert Bigelow is a hotel operator, but has spent quite a few millions of dollars now investing in inflatable structures. You visited him just not too long ago. His wife is wondering where all the money's going, but he's definitely, he's already launched 2 small prototypes of this inflatable structure. What's your view of habitation modules in this approach? This is a private sector initiative? He's spending his own money?
Well, my first impression was when you launch them, everything is gathered around the central part. And when you want to use them, like Skylab or something, you expand it. And of course, Skylab was launched that way, and it had a lot of things mounted on the inside, some things on the outside. You can't do that if the thing is going to be squished down and then go out like this. So I was a little skeptical about the whole idea, but then I saw the ambition that this guy has and how he has developed the central part of it after it expands, and it appears that he can probably get a good bit done. He's got great ambition. He's put a couple of small ones up. He's going to build sort of a space station. Then he wants to put these inflatables on the moon. I said to Bob, I said, how are you going to get the people there? He said something like, taken from a movie, I think, build it and they will come.
Let's talk.
I'm still wondering how they're going to get there.
Let's talk about America's space policy. You saluted the flag standing on the moon, and here we are decades after that historic moment. And are you, again, you're getting back to this unified space policy. What has to happen in your mind to do the mission and missions to Mars that are needed to do what we write about in the book of long-term habitation of that red planet?
Well, President Bush somehow was talked into return to the moon, this time to stay. Well, it didn't come together very well, but that was because of the implementation. And in the succeeding years, I've been thinking about the capabilities of other nations to be able to do this. And why would we want to get into a race with them when we already won the race? Now, the alternative is forget the moon. Think about that for a while, and that's not too good an idea. We sure invested an awful lot in learning an awful lot about the moon. Maybe we can bring nations together instead of each one doing what they want to do. Bring them all together, and we'll be the country that brings them together in an International Lunar Development Authority. And we need to test some of our interplanetary habitation modules. Why don't we test one on the moon? The temperature goes very hot to very cold. So we're testing this, and we're also looking at how good it handles radiation. And is it doing the job that it's supposed to? We sure hope that it is, because now it's the hub. And we got, let's say, Japanese to land it for us. And then robotically, we did the best we could, because we're going to do that same thing on the moon of Mars, Phobos. Now, but that's not just landing one thing. We want to build a base on the moon. So let's take some of Bigelow's inflatables and sprinkle them around, 4 of them, around this thing. It is giving us what we need to then do exactly the same thing from the moon of Mars on the surface of Mars. Yeah. I do know how to get to Mars and bring the spacecraft back empty so it can take other people. Sounds like one-way trips, doesn't it? But it's not. Well, it is, but I call it permanence.
Yeah. And
we have permanence at Mars.
We have Curiosity rover. This thing's a ton. Took a ton of money to get it there, but it's really doing some spectacular things. And one of the things that we've written in the book, how familiar it's making Mars to the public. Try to explain a little bit more about what you talk about in the book about long-term permanence on Mars. Why would we want to do that as a country? What is it that you feel is the spark plug behind something like that? And how the hard part is getting the American public to be interested in it. These are all very complicated questions, but it's definitely...
Why go to the moon?
Yeah.
It's there. Okay. Somebody's going to go there eventually. Let me talk a little bit about these rovers that are there, just for an example. There were 2 rovers before Curiosity, Spirit and Opportunity, opposite sides of Mars, put there about 10 years ago. It was supposed to last 90 days. They were a little better than that. One of them kind of pooped out after 5 years, and the other one's still going. Now, the program manager for this from Burnell, works with JPL, Steve Squires, said, verbally, but then put it in writing, that there are 2 rovers that were working for 5 years with 1 day's instructions, and then they were trying to do what the 1 day's instructions were, but they were very conservative because it didn't know whether it was going to tip over the hill or not. When it began to get close, the instructions said, stop, don't do anything, we'll figure it out. Well, this is pretty slow activities. So slow that he said, what these 2 rovers have done in 5 years could have been done in 1 week if we had human intelligence in orbit around Mars.
It's a picture by a friend of ours, Stan Durda. I always look at this picture and I keep thinking, okay, what kind of advice would you give somebody that's like you did, coming down a ladder and then putting a foot on the surface of Mars for the first time? Is there any kind of advice? I tried to get him to cough this up in the book. We just never got there. But
don't trip on the rocks. You might tear the spacesuit.
Well, it's a
we didn't bring any seamstress along with us.
But I mean, it's the distance, the idea of communication. They're pretty much on their own. This is not a mission control in your ear. Do this, Buzz, pick this up, do that. They're going to be pretty much isolated on their own for the first time.
Right. We got a lot of learning to do. Now, whether this makes sense or not, I thought it did. Let's send 3 people to Phobos, a year and a half, okay? Before we send them, they've got a return capability of another interplanetary spacecraft. So they stay there for for a year and a half while things are placed down there and they assemble. And so I'm going to be generous. I'll bring them back and send another 3 for a year and a half. I'm going to be so generous that I'll bring them back and send another 3, the third group. Now, but this time, the third group has a lander with them. And when they get through putting this base together on Mars, the International Mars Base, they know more about what that thing is than anybody here on Earth. Permanence is what we really want anyway. We want to build into a 2-planet species. And just think of the history of humans on Earth being written thousands of years in the future.
Well, let's do some questions and answers here. I'm sure we've got a scat of things, and I want, Andy, why don't you voice your opinion?
Okay, so Dad, you have over 250 pages of great ideas in the book. There's lots of really cool stuff, and I think you're going to be there in 2016. And you're going to be on Air Force One again, let's just say, and you got your vision. In 15 seconds, though, what are you going to tell him is the reason he should commit to going to Mars?
I hope you tell your successor that you have done all you could during your administration to help your successor of the same party to be able to go down in history with a tremendous heritage of charting a course for this great nation to be the one that leads humanity to a 2-planet system by permanence on Mars. And if you haven't, beware. Things are going to happen that you didn't expect.
Gentlemen, the last row here. Yeah, right there.
If you were offered to go to Mars and stay permanently, would you?
No way. Can't you see how much more valuable I am right here where I am?
Let's thank Dr. Aldrin. I appreciate it.